it's so important for sales, marketing, and customer success and product really to align. How do we reduce the time it takes for our prospects or our new signups to achieve that quote unquote aha moment and make sure.
Welcome to this week's episode of Zero to a Million, brought to you by Unstack. I'm your host, Zach Rego. Today I'm joined by Ramli John, Managing Director at ProductLed, author of Eureka, and host of the GrowthToday.fm podcast. Ramli is a product-led growth expert, and today we're going to be talking about turning more prospects and trial users into lifelong customers. Ramli, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Zach, for having me. I'm always super excited to meet another podcaster.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, we can commiserate on that for a few minutes, but I'm really excited to chat with you. I was talking to you before the show and read a little bit of your book. I'm really excited about it and going deep into it as we kind of redefine our product-led growth strategy. Before we jump into some tactics that hopefully I can steal from you and implement, let's start with how you got to where you are today, which is really on the forefront of product-led growth, and a little bit on your background.
Yeah, I mean, just my background, I actually studied computer science in school. So I got into I was a developer for 4 or 5 years. It was an interesting time because what I really wanted to do was do a startup. So I started a startup. I think I shared this somewhere else. It started off first as me and my buddy was like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a Facebook for dead people? Because his uncle just passed away, and people they were sharing stories, they were crowdsourcing stories about their thing. So we developed this. We developed this, like, we called it Dead Book. And then at some point, me and Ali, my co-founder, we were both developers. Was like, this is depressing, man. Let's pivot from dead people to babies. Let's do baby books because people are really passionate about moms. First time moms and parents were spending $2,000 to $3,000 on scrapbooking for their kids, which is like, what the heck? That's absolutely crazy. So we created this digital scrapbooking space. We put it out there, and we got a few moms, and then at some point realized, hey, what the heck? Like, we actually need to hire a mom to release this. So, I mean, at that point, we're like, we're no longer into this. This is not our space we want to be in. And I realized, hey, man, a huge gap in my skills is marketing. So I know the text stuff, and I started reading about it, started blogging about it, and through my blog, I got introduced to lean startup and content marketing. So I got into content, and I think I did that for 4 or 5 years. So I was just consulting, and at some point, I was doing a bunch of ads and campaigns for this. I didn't even know, it's not even called product-led at that point. It was a company that has a free trial. There was no product-led growth at that point, and I was getting them a bunch of signups, and I looked at their data, and it's like, 1 second, a lot of these people I'm getting signups, the founder's super happy, but none of them are actually sticking around past 1 month, past 2 months. And I'm like, we need to fix this. Like, they're happy I'm bringing on users, but they're actually not making impact into their long-term growth strategy. So, I mean, Googling, I found product-led growth and realized, like, Wes is it, and I found out we went to the same school. So that's how I connected with Wes Bush, and now we started a podcast last year, and now I work full-time on product-led growth. So that's a crazy zigzag journey of where I came from to where I'm now.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that client that really, I guess, got the gears turning of, like, there's a flaw, right? Like, it's all working up until a point. How long was their trial? Was it full featured? Like, tell me a little bit about the experience that you saw the prospect going through.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 14-day trial. People were signing up. They were trying it out, but they weren't actually sticking around after trying it out. And when I say it is essentially a full feature trial. I mean, that's I was like, hey, can I get access to not just your Google Analytics, but like some product data? I mean, the thing with Google Analytics sometimes is we take a look at analytics and the Google Analytics, and it only gives you surface level data. When I started asking, hey, are people actually like activating? Are they actually do they actually end up achieving that quote unquote aha moment in the product? And after that, do they actually stick around after they pay the first invoice? Do they stick around after that? Huge gaps, and like there was huge holes in the funnel that that I needed to work on. But I was marketing, right? It's not my job, they said. So I was like, this is not like, I want a bigger, like, I want to fix growth problems, not just sign up problems, so to speak.
One question I think I know I've always struggled with in my career is getting that in product data to really understand, which I think is really important to product led growth. And I think every company should try to implement it as early as possible.
Right.
We've done a good job of building tools into our app that tell us what users are doing. A lot of companies don't do that on the front end. What tool were you using to understand the data, or what is there a tool you recommend or a strategy you recommend for kind of understanding that data as early as possible?
I mean, it helped that I had a tech background. I asked them to give me SQL access to
Nice.
their product data.
Okay. Well, that's
I mean,
cheating.
I know that's cheating, but I would suggest, I think just if I had to do it over again, I would, like, now there's a tool called Segment. Like, I would ask them to install it as quickly as possible, because now you can plug in a bunch of, like, you can plug in one segment and install. You can easily install a bunch of other analytics tool like Mixpanel or app queues or Pendo. Like, it all plugs into Segment, so it's like this one-stop plug to analyze product data, because engineering time is valuable. Like, they're not gonna be like, hey, can you give me data on this? They're like, oh, I'm too busy, man. But I think if you can get them to install like at least Segment to plug a bunch of things in, that would be awesome.
So I think this client, I guess, right, made your mind shift from let me drive traffic to let me drive revenue, right? Which I think every marketer should be thinking about. How, and I'm sorry to focus a lot on this client, but I think it's an interesting use case that we're all kind of in. How were they selling those free trials that were coming in? Did they have a sales team that was starting to call them and hoping to help convert them? What was that kind of process once you acquired the lead for them?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, they were still, once again, it wasn't called product led growth. They had product and customer success reaching out to those folks once they're in the free trial, and they started experiencing some kind of value. And like, looking back, it's like, oh, that's a quote unquote product qualified lead, which we can talk about later, or this is this is a whole product self-serve sales motion versus a self-driven sales motion, which like that. Look, yeah, exactly, that's what they did. What they had product and customer success to follow up to those trials.
So I think there's a lot of startups that live in like limbo between product led growth. Honestly, full transparency, we are kind of in limbo. Like, we get half of our signups every month, roughly, are touchless. They come in, they do everything we want, they upgrade. It's flawless, right? They read our emails, they onboard themselves, and they upgrade after 10 to 14 days. The other half, really a persona that we think is the right fit for the product, but they just need a little bit of additional guidance. We're having a demo. When do you think it's the right time to start like going all in on a product led growth strategy to avoid people either dropping off at a significant rate or feeling like they're having a bad experience or not reaching that, quote unquote, aha moment?
I'm trying to frame this question as to when's the right time to fire your sales team. Is that your question? Like, no, like that. Actually, I'm not a big fan of pure product led sales motion, especially for B2B. Like, people are like, oh, Ramli, you work at product led. You think product led onboarding is the best, or product led self serve? And I tell them, like, no, I'm actually not like a proponent of pure product led. And the data shows it. Like, the best model for B2B SaaS or B2B in general is actually a hybrid approach, like what you guys are doing, because there will be some people who need like, there will be people who need to sell up to their manager and they don't know how, and that's where sales. That's where you're not. You wouldn't call it sales. You call it like account management or customer success. They don't get scared, right? They need help to sell up to their manager or their CTO, or maybe they need help with something. There are actually some people who are interested in this. And just going back to data, First Point VC, they have data that shows that the conversion of sales assisted onboarding or sales assisted motion is like 15 or 20% versus like a pure product led self-serve motion is just 2 to 3%. So I mean, looking at that, like if you're a B2B SaaS, you got at some point, whether you're a high enterprise or you're pure sales led or pure product led, you're gonna go to the middle ground. Like this is what we see with Slack. Like Slack started off pure product led and they moved into a hybrid approach. Last year, they in their stock filing, 60% of their revenue came from sales, like from the sales team, which is crazy. And at the same time, if you're like HubSpot, where they were pure sales led, they were a huge sales team like 3 to 4 years ago. Now they've found the middle ground where they're a hybrid approach. So I think just going back to your question, I think like the middle ground between having the best of both worlds with sales led and product led is actually where the magic is at. I mean, if you're pure product led, the question now is when do you introduce sales, or when you're sales led, when do you introduce self serve?
Yeah. See, ours was somewhat unintentional, I think, in kind of going in the model we're going in. But even my long term vision for developing the sales organization, there's, to your point about segment, right? There's a lot of segments that we sell into, and there is a large portion of them that should be self-serve. It's low ASP, easy to onboard. There is a segment that needs, to sell people that are still brainwashed by WordPress or HubSpot, to use a couple examples. But most marketers that find us that are part of an organization, they need that internal. They're the internal champion. They need that story of why we're changing and what's the outcomes, and it has worked well. And I think, the one thing we've started to move on that you've talked a little bit about is when should the prospect have their first aha moment, and how do you create the story for product led growth, not only in the product but well before it, which obviously is where your career started, right? Was in the marketing piece of it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
For particularly for prospects, I think when is as soon as possible. I mean, and let me dig into that a little bit deeper. Is that people are very impatient. I think they really want to see value added as quickly as possible. In terms of like seeing that and seeing the value of the product, it's something that it's so important for sales, marketing, and customer success and product really to align. How do we reduce the time it takes for our prospects or our new signups to achieve that quote unquote aha moment, and make sure that they achieve that and make sure that they achieve the right kind of aha moment. I think this is something that is also not talked about a lot. Is that for products, you can have multiple quote unquote aha moments depending on the segment of the user that is signing up. Like if we look at like Canva, which is this design tool, if you're a teacher, your aha moment might be different from a designer or a marketer, because a marketer's quote unquote customer job, what they're trying to achieve with Canva is to design a Facebook ad, versus a teacher is trying to create engaging content, versus like a student might be to impress to get that A plus. So I mean that's the point here, is that for this segments that we have, which ones are the ones that we can minimize as quickly as possible and get them to the promised land as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So in your experience, have you spent a lot of time thinking about the ad creative or the calls to action that almost plant a seed of a coming soon kind of aha moment, so that when they take that next step, it's like you've already set the expectation. Here's what's coming, and here's the output.
I mean that's another great point, is that the aha moment should start a lot earlier, and you're talking about setting expectation. And when people think about onboarding or getting people that aha moment, typically for product led companies, they're like, oh, that's the product team's job. They're gonna figure that piece out. But what you're talking now is like early on, how can we have sales and product marketing to have really great messaging and positioning, so that even before they sign up, they're already excited. They've already had this, oh, I can see now how this tool can help change my life to make my life better, so that when they get into the product, they're super excited. if there's any hurdles or any UX issues, or your experience is not fully optimized, they'll blow past that because you've already kind of given them that seed, like you talked about, that seed of value. You're setting the environment and the space and the stage for them to succeed, and you just have to hit the button to launch them into the new life or new better experience that they have.
Okay. So, you set the expectation with the lead, they convert to a trial. What are the best strategies to engage a prospect in trial? And let's focus on like in product. I think there's a balancing act in app that is, do you use tools that create this flow and have, pop-ups and, CTAs all over it, which is helpful, but potentially a distraction. Is it product videos and demos with the founder or a CSM that's showing folks what to do? What have you seen work really well, and really what would be your recommendation for most of your clients on here's the guidance to convert from lead to trial?
Yeah. I mean, I can share ones that I think these are must-haves, and then ones are nice to have depending on your audience. One of the first must-have I always suggest any company that I talk to is welcome your users, welcome your trials. Like that's one thing that I don't see as much as as much as I like to, is just imagine going to a party and then you come in and the host doesn't greet you. Like that's like you're still setting the experience. This is their first time, and one of the best ones I've seen is user list, where they have this short video from their founder and they made it really super personal. You sign up to it. Jane Portman, and I did a review of their onboarding. She's like, "Hey, how's it going? My name is Jane. If you want to reach out, my email is jane@userlist." Like, how personal is that? And it's sure they're a 3-person startup, but let's talk about another one, Deputy.com. They're a 500 people startup, like a 500 people scale up, and still they have a video from the CEO and founder, and they're like, "Hey, I want to welcome you here. If you want to just jump in, click here. If you want to watch me show you how to use this tool, click here." So he's giving the option now, but it's coming from the CEO. Like that's talk about personality. And there's this psychological principle that Robert Cialdini talked about in his book, the psychology of persuasion. There's the likability factor. When people like you, when people like somebody in your company, they're more likely to do the hard things just because they find you likable. Like imagine your friends, right? You do a favor to your friend, but if a random dude on the street be like, "Hey Zach, can you help me? I don't know, like help me check over my resume, Zach." You'd be like, "I don't know who you are. Like what the heck?" So I think that's definitely a must-have that I don't see enough, is just welcoming people. And that sets the stage for what's to come. You're talking about expectation earlier. That's like a big must-have. I think a nice to have would be, some kind of tours or some kind of tool tips that really help guide people. But I'd warn them, because a lot of product tours are absolutely really terrible. And what I mean by terrible is they're just like, "Hey, here's a button. This is how you change your name here." Or here's another button. This is how you change the color. Don't tell me what the button does. Tell me why this is important to me achieving what I want to achieve. So that's, I think, a super critical one. It's like, what does success look like for the users or the free trials? And what is the minimum number of things they need to learn or do to get to that? And that should be where your tooltips or tours should be. I see even big companies do this, where they're like, "Oh, here's this button here, here's this button there." Stop doing that. Figure out and direct them to the path. And a good product tour I've seen is Canva.com. Sign up for it, and then they give you 4-step product tour to get you to complete and download your design. Here's how you add an image. Do it now. Here's how you add a template. Here's where you download this. And there you go. Congrats. 3 steps to download and get to that point of realization. So, I mean, that's a nice to have, because some apps actually don't, some users really, really don't like product tours. And I can think of developers. Developers actually really don't like being told what to do sometimes. They like to figure it out on their own. So that's where, hey, product tours might not be the best fit for that audience. versus something like Canva, where you need the design now. You're a CEO, you're a founder, you're a business owner, you're a marketer, you're a teacher. I just need to get my slide. Help me, direct me there. So a product tour is best for that audience. So nice to have product tour. Depends really on your audience if it's something they like or not, and that's something you can A/B test or split test if it really does help them, or does it scare them away or push them away.
Funny you say that. I always skip the product tours and then I immediately regret it. And I'm like, oh, shit, where is this?
It's like IKEA, you know, when you buy a furniture,
no.
like I throw out the instructions and then my wife is like, what is a screw?
If you haven't listened to the Bill Burr stand up where he talks about putting together something from IKEA and his wife's like, why are you screaming? And he's like, I don't know. It's really, really well done and it's spot on. I've been in that exact situation. When my son was born and we were getting like a box a day of like different swings and all this stuff, and I had to put it together, like, oh, this looks easy. And I'd do the same thing. And then I'd get halfway through and it'd be put together the wrong way. I'd have to take it all the way apart. But the product tours are good for the right persona. I love the co-founder video. We actually just asked, Grant to record one.
Cool.
So I'm excited about that. And actually I stole a little bit of the structure and format of it from Rand Fishkin with Spark Toro, which I signed up for recently. And his emails have been consistent, really well done. One thing that he mentioned that you've mentioned on both of your examples is, this is my personal email. If you need anything or want to connect, reply to me here. I replied to him. He replied back. I asked some questions. It was really, a high level of service that I think you expect from a smaller company for sure.
Right.
Interesting on deputy.com. I think that's something that we should all go look into on, hey, this CEO is still putting in the effort, still putting in the time to talk to prospects as they come through.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that's something I wish people would do more. It's just,
you see it on like much smaller scales, but like even doing this podcast, when I get on the phone with somebody that's watched a video or listened to it, they're like, I feel like I already know you. And it's like, well, you listen to one podcast. Probably talked about having a baby because that's pretty relevant in my life. So you know that. But it levels up my credibility and my relationship with them. And then same with Grant. And, some of the best conversations we have with new prospects come from, Grant being a guest on another podcast and just talking about our story. So seeing a face, hearing the story from him, hearing about his background really levels it up. So for all of our listeners, I think there's a great strategy for you there right out of the gate that anyone can implement with 20 minutes time. I did 30 takes on the video I recorded yesterday. So that took a little bit longer for a 30-second video than I expected. But next step on it, you've converted the customer. So obviously, net retention is key to scale. When do you think product onboarding ends in a SaaS company with product-led growth?
Yeah, I mean, this is where the debate comes in. I mean, I'm going to tell you what other people say, and I'm going to tell you what I think it is. Some people think it's when they convert. It's the first time they have the invoice, and I would argue against that, because especially for a 14-day trial, and this is something that AppQ's found, is that at one point, this is a quote from Jonathan Kim. He's the former CEO and founder of AppQ's. Is that their price point was so low that after 14 days, people would pay the first invoice just so they can extend their trial. And then after the first invoice, they would cancel that they didn't like it. So I would argue that a conversion from trial to paid is not a success milestone. I also don't think it's the aha moment. I think the way that I think about onboarding or product onboarding, it's really about habit formation. Like, good product onboarding should lead to what you said, net retention or just retention. And what I see when you do something once, for example, the first time you, whatever habit you just form, for example, going to the gym. The first time you go to the gym, that doesn't mean that's not success. You're not gonna get the results, right? You're not gonna get that fit body or that cardio that you want after the first time. It takes a habit, and that's why I some people call this a magic number, With Facebook, they said you add 7 friends in 10 days, but I actually call it a product adoption indicator in the book. And what I mean by that, it's a leading indicator that somebody has formed a habit or has adopted your product. An example I bring up is Slack. With Slack, some people think successful onboarding is when two people from the same company, they send one message to each other, or maybe 10, maybe 11. And Stuart Butterfield, the CEO of Slack, and this is something he quoted at first round article, is that for them, a successfully onboarded team is when they have sent 2,000 messages to internally. And 2,000 because 93% of them still are using Slack. And the point here is that he has connected their success for onboarding to now retention. And it's something that people need to really drive at, is that it takes multiple usage of a product before it kind of sticks and kicks in. So I think that for me is what, here onboarding ends when you have that leading indicator that people are going to keep using your product going forward.
Yeah, this is a bit of a self-serving question for us, but I think something that a lot of startups, once they have traction, start to test add-ons, right? So you release a new feature that's complementary to your product set. You want to upsell into it. Any good examples of strategies or companies to look to that have done this effectively and kind of almost started that product-led journey again after they've acquired and built out a strong core customer base?
Are you talking about like a land and expand strategy, like when
Exactly.
you already have?
Yeah. So hypothetically, we were going to add communications tools for email and SMS. Not that we're going to, but there's an opportunity there to upsell an add-on that's a new product but adjacent to what we're doing. Any recommendations for how to execute on that vision?
Yeah, I mean, talking about examples, I'm thinking of whether that's HubSpot, where they have a bunch of add-ons, as well as Slack, where they have add-ons. I think when it comes to add-ons, and this is the way I think about it, is once a customer or user has achieved their customer job or whatever they're trying to achieve with it, what's next? And the way that I think about it is, you can either go both ways. You can either widen or go wider with their customer job. So, for example, with HubSpot, with somebody signs up for HubSpot marketing, they become an active user of HubSpot marketing. If you want to go wider, why don't you sell them HubSpot sales, HubSpot support? So you're like going adjacent customer jobs. The other option is like to figure out what is for this particular segment or this particular user or this particular persona. Once you've achieved that particular thing that they're trying to achieve, can we go deeper? And one thing that I can think of is Calendly. Like once you have the basic membership, right? You're setting up your calendar. Well, here's other features that you can pay a little bit more. You can actually accept payment with Calendly now if you're a consultant, or maybe if you're a sales team. Here's a round robin feature that now you can, like, you're going deeper to that particular customer job of Calendly, which is you're trying to schedule meetings, but you can schedule meetings and get paid. You can schedule meetings with multiple salespeople. So I guess that just goes back to, hey, for that segment, what is the next logical thing that they'd want to solve based on that problem that you've already solved for them? So that that the selling isn't about more like upselling per se, but more like how do we help them? Like how do we help them further with that particular problem that they have? Because now you've solved a problem, but they have another problem. Like what is that next problem that you can solve for them? And that would make it an easier conversation to, I guess, upsell to them.
Love it. And I had a question on here to best examples of product-led growth. If everyone that has been watching on YouTube, I've taken a bunch of notes, and that's mostly for me to go implement this stuff sooner than later. You so far mentioned user lists for their welcome onboarding, which I think is amazing. Deputy.com for their welcome kind of in-product onboarding as well. Canva, which I've always looked to as an amazing onboarding experience, obviously amazing product experience as well. If you are anywhere near design tools or trying to implement product-led growth tools and not near design tools, go sign up for Canva just to check it out. Any other companies, you mentioned Slack as well, any other companies that you're like gold standard, they've got a trial, go sign up, just go through the experience to see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, my other favorite one, which I haven't done a review or onboarding teardown of, is Wave. Wave.com is this wavehq.com, which is this free trial financial invoicing tool for entrepreneurs. And one thing that I really love about what they do is when you sign up, they ask you, hey, what is it that you want to do today? Is it to send an invoice? Is it to get paid? Is it to do payroll? And really, based on that, you get different onboarding emails and product tours. So think about like that's for me is absolutely like a must have for any kind of experience when you're serving multiple segments is when you personalize it based on that particular like I'll keep going back to customer job like whatever that user segment is trying to achieve and personalize it and drive them to the most minimum number of steps and get them excited and tell them, oh, you're gonna get paid 3 times faster with Wave. Then you really do improve your onboarding to the next level. Like I remember somebody once said that segmentation really is the conversion crack of user onboarding. So I mean, it really I call it steroids as well. Like if you can find ways to personalize and segment your user your experience like what Wave does, then you can really see big improvements from experiences that I've seen from the companies I worked with.
Love it. Love it. We are working hard on that as a next step because there's a ton of opportunity there for us. And I think what do you want to do today? Short term, right? Creates a level of urgency on both parts, right? What do you want to do today? And really, how can we solve it today? Right. I think that's interesting verbiage choice there. Last question we ask every guest. 2 books you recommend every founder reads. Obviously, Eureka by Ramli John already on the list. We're going to add it. I'm going to add it. I'm going to read it. But what are the other 2 books you really look to for guidance?
Yeah, I mean, 2 things that I mean, this is something that I read almost every year. The first one is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think just critical for founders, knowing people's name, and it's just a good reminder. I wish as something that I've read way earlier. The other thing, and this is actually not a business book. It's called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And it's about this is a book that's recommended by Barack Obama, Oprah, like Bill Gates. Like this is a book that is a story about this person who is on a journey and they have to overcome obstacles and really knowing that and people try to pull him away and try to distract him. I think it's for a lot of founders who have a mission. They would relate to this character. Like people have said no to them before and they've faced obstacle, and this is just a good reminder that if you're on a mission, don't let distractions get in the way. So I mean, that's just the other book that I would suggest.
Love it. The Alchemist. That's a new one to add to our list for sure. And another vote for How to Make Friends and Influence People, which is a great read. And to Ramli's point, recommend everyone reads it, once every couple of years because there's a lot of good reminders on there. Ramli, where can everyone find you? Obviously, want to make sure that they're connected with you on the platform of choice, and we will link to all the great resources. As Ramli mentioned, they do a bunch of teardowns of a bunch of different companies that have a ton of insights, as well as obviously Ramli's book we will link to. And where else can people connect with you?
Yeah, you can connect with me on Twitter. Super active there. Ramli John, LinkedIn as well. And to Rand's vein, you can also send me an email, ramli@productled.com. And I do reply back pretty consistently there. So happy to help.
Love it. Follow Ramli on Twitter. Follow growthtoday.fm and his podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, please subscribe on the platform of choice. You can find us on all podcast platforms and YouTube as well. Thanks so much for joining me today, Ramli.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.